Okay, so you guys all got exercise 229's handout. We're winding down to the very end, and if you read exercise 229 carefully, specifically in the posting your work category, item number 3, basically I say post whatever you're working on. This is the translation, okay? Because mostly what you need is time to work. You don't really need me making you do new stuff. So whatever you're working on today is what you turn in as a post for exercise 229, and you'll get credit for it. Okay? That being said, I'm still trying to figure out the right way of teaching you line drawings out of CAD or out of Rhino. So you're going to get to listen to me talk about it again, right? Hopefully beating you over the head enough. If you don't really want to listen to me and you want to zone out and do your own thing, I won't be offended. Okay? But at the same time, I'm really trying to figure this out because I want you guys to be able to do this fluently and easily when you move on, whether it's in your more advanced studios here or whether you move on to Berkeley and the like. I just want you to be able to do this so that it's just not a lot of effort to get good quality plans and sections out. So what my purpose today is I'll really quickly go through the export process in Rhino and some of the rendering settings, but mostly I want to actually show you how I would assemble it in Illustrator and how I would make it, quote, look good. So if you're not really familiar with Illustrator, this might be a little over your head, but at the same time I think it's important. Next Monday, I will spend some time in Photoshop showing you how I would Photoshop some of the renderings to save myself some time. Like, for example, the ocean is really hard to render and to get it to look right. So the easiest way is to find an image of the ocean that you like and collage that in Photoshop, and then you don't even have to worry about the ocean. So next Monday, I'll spend basically the lecture time talking about Photoshop and dropping things in that way. If you've already taken 135, you know a lot of what I will talk about in that. Likewise, if you've taken 135, you know a lot about what I'll talk about today in Illustrator. I'm just trying to get you those last couple pieces of the puzzle, and if you can get those under wraps, I think you're really well prepared for the overall trajectory of where you're going in your architectural career. So today is going to be, again, about that. Mostly during lab time from now on, it's really about get those renderings out. Remember, you're only required to have 4 renderings. Interior, day and night. Exterior, day and night. Those are the 4. If you have extras, I will never turn away extra renderings. If you have line drawings or sections that you want to show in the final, I will never turn those away. Right? They're not officially graded, but I guess I would say I would go as far as if you give me extra, maybe it'll be a beneficial thing, right? But there's not officially extra credit or anything. But I like seeing things, and if they're pretty, you never know, it might help. Okay. So, but again, it's about those renderings. Those are what's important. Spend your time over the next 3 class days working on that. For example, if you got some of your renderings set, you really liked them, you're ready to do the big final rendering, right? You get your settings set, come in here on Friday or Saturday, right? Plug in one of the computers, put it's rendering, right? And let it go over the weekend, right? That's a good time to do it because nobody's around on Sunday to mess with it, right? And then on Monday, I'm in here first thing in the morning and I'll see all your little signs, right? So that's the normal thing at the end of the semester. I'm expecting that, okay? But if you get your settings ready today, then you can do that, or you can even copy it onto a couple computers and render on 3 computers at once, right? Some of that kind of stuff. You get the idea. Okay, so what I wanted to talk through yet again is these line drawings out of Rhino and getting them into Illustrator and kind of the process of working with it. I spent some time between last class and this class trying to write up how I would go about doing this in a step-by-step manner. So it's assembly 10.7. I don't have all the images put in yet. I'm still very much working on that. But this is basically a step-by-step of what I'm going to go through today. You can see that the images aren't in between all of these last steps, but you get the idea. It also references a bunch of the smaller tutorials that talk through some of what you're doing. So I have this plan view that's the same plan view that I worked with last time that's kind of been established. I'm going to use that still as my base. I've already saved it as my named view. So I went to Set View, Named Views, and I saved it as Plan 01. So that's the plan that I'm going to use. That allows me to come back to this. While I'm in this view, right, I'm going to click on this little arrow, and I'm going to go to Set Camera, Show Camera. And when I click on Show Camera, it's going to show the camera in these other views, right? And I can see the target as this point, right, and the lens angle as that point. It's a little bit easier to see it maybe in one of the perspective views. Let me jump into this view for a second. And because it's a parallel projection, the camera is extraordinarily tall. See that spike that's coming up in the center of my drawing? That's essentially my camera. And if I look at it in 3D and we zoom in here a little bit, and I got too many things in the way. Let me look at it in wireframe for just a second. We can see that there's actually 3 points. I got to get the right view so you guys can see this, right? All right. This is the target, that point right there, right? This is the pitch and roll of the camera. It's basically the rotation of the camera. And this camera point right here is the angle. So if I wanted to switch from the lens angle, so if I wanted to switch from a 22 millimeter to something else, I could drag any one of these points to adjust that camera view. I don't really want to do it. What I want is to create a rectangle that is the size of this view, right? And by doing that, I'll be able to line up really easily my clay rendering with my line drawing, right? The two will work together. So what I'll do is I'll use the rectangle tool, and I wrote up a tutorial for this as well. It's Rhino 5.37 that walks you through how to do that. Again, it doesn't have the images in it yet, but I'm working on it. And what I'm going to do is go from I have to turn on point snap here. I'm going to go from the target out to the lens angle right there, and that will create a small rectangle. Okay? This rectangle is half the size of what I need it to be, so I'll type scale, and I'll use this lens angle point as my base point, and then I'll type 2 to double its size. And now you can see it highlighted in yellow there. That's the size of the viewport that I'm ultimately going to be exporting. Okay, let me go ahead. That's the duplicate. So there it is. Okay, that then, when I do the Make 2D command, so I'm going to switch back into my plan view here. I'm going to type STView so that I can see this as a section. So plan 01. There it is. When I go to export this, we see that that's a holdover from one of my old ones. Actually, before I export it, let me get rid of all of this old stuff. And let me just go ahead and delete these layers. There. I'm getting rid of all the old layers so that, because I'm using this file over and over again, I want to make it a little bit cleaner. So I have the view set up. I have that rectangle set up that I already drew. And now I'm going to do the Make 2D command. And I'll select Objects, All, right? And I'll go ahead and hit Enter. Now, I'm doing a couple things when I do this. I'm going to check the box for showing hidden lines, because I think hidden lines can be valuable, good additions to your overall line drawing. But I'm also going to check the box for Maintain Source Layers. And it's not necessary that you do this, but when you move it into Illustrator, it can be nice to be able to select different groups of objects. So I can select, the hidden lines that are related to the furniture, and I can do something with those. I can select the object lines that are related to a particular cut, and do something with those. So it can help down the road. So I'm checking both of those: Show Hidden Lines and Maintain Source Layers, right? And then I'll go ahead and say OK. And this will make my 2D set of lines. And we have to be a little patient while Rhino does it. And there you go, it's done it. Okay? I'm going to switch out of the plan view and into the top view. Right? And there is my plan. Notice that it exported that rectangle for me. That rectangle is exactly the dimensions or the aspect ratio of the renderings that I'm making, because I'm keeping this view consistent when I do my renders. So in order for this to come into Illustrator nicely, it actually needs to be moved back to 0.00. That was a step that I was missing last class, which is why the export to Illustrator didn't work correctly. So I'm going to type move, and I'll move from this corner to 0.0, 0, 0. and then we'll zoom selected, and it almost lines up on my drawing here. Okay. Then I'm going to export selected, and instead of picking Rhino or AutoCAD, I'm actually going to go straight to Illustrator. So I'm picking Adobe Illustrator AI. And so I do, however, have a really special option here, and that is that thus far with renderings, we haven't been concerned with scale so much, but it would be nice to actually have a scale plan, right, or a scale elevation, because that's the purpose of these line drawings. So let's go ahead and add a scale to it. So I'm going to check this box for preserve model scale, and if I wanted it to be 1/4 inch equals a foot, right, I have to do a little bit of math here, right, but I'm going to say 48 inches is equal to 1 inch, right, which is 1/4 inch equals a foot. If it was 1/8 inch equals a foot, this would be 96, right? 48 and 48 is 96, right? If I want, so you see how you kind of add to it, okay? So 48 inches equals 1 inch. RGB or CMYK, it really doesn't matter for what we're doing. If we were ultimately going to laser cut, we'd care that it's RGB. We can convert the objects once they're in Illustrator, right? And the rest of this doesn't matter quite so much, the export viewport boundary or any of that kind of stuff. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And then I got to give it a name. So let me make it in my flash drive. And today is 229. And I'm going to call this and I'll go ahead and click Save. It brings up the AI export options again, just in case I wanted to change anything, but I'll go ahead and say OK. And so I've done that part of it, and I'll come back to this in just a second. Okay? So for now, I'm going to jump back to my plan view, right? And I need to do a clay rendering of my plan view. So a couple things in the clay rendering, right? I've already assigned, because I've been working with the same file, I've already assigned all of the objects on the top of my section, all of these objects. I've already assigned a see-through material, right? I did actually take the land and make the land just a plain white material because I wanted to see some of the shadow on the land. So I went ahead and did do that. All of the glass in the building is just transparent. There's no reflections or anything. And everything at the bottom, I assigned a basic white material. Same thing that I did to the terrain, which is just white. The white material, all I did was change the diffuse color to white. Okay? Transparent, all I did was change the transparency color to white. Okay? We should click on transparent, sorry. There's transparent. All I did was change the transparency color to white. Right? Very basic materials. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go to my options, and I'm going to load my settings for my VisOpt file, or my clay render VisOpt file. I already have it loaded, so I'm not going to reload it. The only thing that I've done is I have turned back on the physical camera at about a shutter speed of 20. That seemed to give me the correct shadows that I was after. The one other piece of the puzzle is I wanted to mimic sunlight with a directional light, a basic directional light. So what I did was, and you guys saw this last class, but I'll repeat myself again. Let me be in the render view here for just a second, and let me go ahead and switch to shaded. There. I went ahead and I turned on the sun, like this. And it would be helpful if I could find the sun. Right. There's my sun right there. And I went to Properties, and I went to Light, and then I went to Modify Sun. And when I got to Modify Sun, I wrote down these two numbers, the azimuth and the altitude. So 28.2, excuse me, 128.2 and 17.1. And then I hit Cancel because I didn't actually want to adjust it. Let's go back to Layers, turn back off the sun. And then I created basically a straight line. And I can do this in the top view. Sometimes it's easier to see it in the top view. Create a straight line that went straight up. Okay? Then with that straight line, I'm going to switch back into the rendered view here for a second. There it is. Okay? I I said, okay, first thing I need to do is raise it up by 17.1 degrees. So I did a rotate 3D. So that I could raise it up 17.1 degrees. There it is. And then I did a basic rotate by negative, because I want it to go counterclockwise, or clockwise, 128.2. 0.2. And there it is as a vector, right? And that matches what my sun was. And then I copied it and pasted it right here on that corner. And then I took a light, a basic directional light, and I started with a point on that end of the vector, and I ended with a point on that end of the vector. So all I'm doing is making the directional light match exactly the settings that were set by the sun. Okay? And this just helps me get decent shadows when I'm doing my rendering. So let's jump back to the plan view, right, which I already have set up. Again, I have the see-through material applied, and I'm ready to go ahead and render. So when I go to render, we let it process, and you can see already that I'm getting the correct diagonal there of all my sun and all my shadows coming through my building. The advantage of doing this kind of a clay render over other renders is that because I'm using the see-through material on top and I have all my windows still installed, I get all of these lines inside the building that represent the light as if it were coming in the building correctly, right? Not as if the top of the building was removed. And so this is actually very accurate lighting conditions for what's happening inside my building. So I get this very nice clay rendering, and I'll go ahead and save that to my flash drive. Give me 1 second to get to my folder here. And I'll go ahead and say, okay. Now, this aspect ratio exactly matches the aspect ratio that I did for my Make 2D rectangle, right? If you're getting a result that doesn't match, if it's a different size, if you go into your V-Ray options and you go to Output, right here, you want to make sure you can uncheck this lock and click on Get View Aspect, which will get the current view aspect ratio, and then you can click Lock, right? And then you can specify, a particular size, and it will stay within that ratio, which is the important part. Okay? So I have that. You can also bump up the size dramatically to get more resolution. Because this is such a basic render, you can really push up the resolution a lot because it's just white. It's just shadows. Okay? So on this one, I just bumped up the rendering size a little bit more. And we'll let it run through. I don't have the network render on for this because it's not long enough to worry about. So give me 1 second to finish this up. And there it is done. I'll go ahead and save it. And I'm just going to call this clay render large. And I'll go ahead and click save. Okay, so I have that saved. Now I'm going to go ahead and go over to Illustrator. So I'm going to go to All Programs, Adobe CS6, and then Illustrator. If I just went to my flash drive and double-clicked on the Illustrator file, it would open CS3. Really annoying, but that's the way the lab computers work. So I'm opening CS6, and now I'm going to go to File, and then Open, and I'm going to open that Illustrator file that I exported that's been scaled for me. I'll go to 136 in today's exercise. There it is, Plan in Illustrator. And I'll go ahead and say Open. So I've gone ahead and I've opened it. We see that my lines have come in. They happen to be over in this gray space, but that's not the end of the world. if I look at my layers, because I chose to preserve the layers when I did the Make 2D, I've got a bunch, and I really need to expand this a little bit more. I've got a bunch of layers that are going to help me work through my object. So if we look here, I've got hidden lines for the chair, I've got hidden lines for the table, I've got the roof cap, I've got patio, I've got a bunch of information based on my model layers. I'll be able to use those for line weights as I go forward. So all that's really useful. So the first thing that I need to do is let me press Control minus so I can zoom out a little bit. And since the drawing that I'm making, right, it's already been scaled, but I'd really like it to match up with what my viewport was. I'm going to go ahead and adjust what's called the artboard, which is the page in Illustrator. And so there's a tool for that. It's called Artboard right here. And when I click on it, I get an active selection of what that white page is. And I can go ahead and I can adjust it so that it will match up with my viewport. So I'm just dragging it, and it'll actually snap to my viewport, right? Something like that, something like that. Now, this right now isn't a particular page size. Right? If I wanted to be able to print this on 11 by 17, for example, I can come up here with the artboard selected, and I can specify a width and a height of 11 by 17. Right? I can't talk anymore today. So if I have a width of 11 inches and a height of, or width of 17 inches, sorry, it should be 17 inches and a height of 11 inches. Right, there's my 11 by 17. Okay, a little small, right, given the export, so maybe I'll bump that size up. Maybe I'll go 22 inches. Yeah, that one's big enough. By 17 inches, something like that. Okay, we know that's going to fit on something. Ultimately, I can scale this down. We just know that right now these lines are in quarter scale, okay? Which is why I picked it, right? You might end up with 8 scale because you want it to be smaller. It depends on the size of the board you're trying to make, etc. It doesn't matter. The scale is just the fact that they are in fact scaled right now, okay? Okay, so I have that established. When I'm done, I can go ahead and click on the arrow key, and I now have my page size in Illustrator, which is called the artboard, is set. Okay? So now, so that we can kind of see what's going on here, I'm going to go ahead and place in that clay rendering background. So I'm going to go to File and then Place, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the large right here, and I'll go ahead and click Place, and it comes in as an object. Right? I'm going to want that object on my layers to actually be at the very bottom on its own layer. So let me go ahead and create a new layer. Right? I'll move the object onto that layer. There it is. And we'll drag that layer to the very bottom of the layer stack so that all of my lines are on top of it. Okay? The next thing that I'll do is I'll use the pre-transform tool, which is right here, to adjust the size of this so that it fits right on, right, we may have to zoom in a little bit, basically right on top of that rectangle. So there it is on that side. We'll come down here, pre-transform. I'm holding down Shift to stay in proportion, and there it is matching up with that side. If I press Control 0, now the shadow that's on the background matches up exactly with where all of my lines are. Right, which is really convenient because it adds just a little bit of depth to the drawing that I've already created. Okay? Now the drawing still isn't all that attractive because I have no line weights assigned, I haven't worked with colors, I haven't worked with hidden lines, I haven't worked with any of that just yet. So let's spend a little bit of time digesting what's going on in my layer stack so that I can modify this to really work with it. So I'm going to press Control plus so we can kind of see here. Some of this I'm going to have to kind of experiment with where certain lines are based on my my layer structure. But as I look here, we've got a line, we've got a set of objects that are called exterior walls, and they happen to be shown in purple. Why? I don't know, but they're there. I want to go ahead and select all of the lines that are on the exterior walls layer. Looks like maybe I have 2 sets. This is visible lines and hidden lines that are the exterior walls. We'll go with visible first. And if I click right here, it's going to select every line that's on that layer. So if I click where that box appears, it's going to select every line that's on that layer. And we can see once I have the selection that, yeah, okay, there's a bunch of exterior lines that are showing up. Okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and make some adjustments to these lines. right? I can also, if we wanted to see it a little bit better, I can choose to go into object isolation mode. So let me go ahead and go into isolation mode, and it's going to show me just where those lines are. So I have a line right there, I have a line right there, there, and there. Right? So it's not all the lines that I want, but what I want to do is I want to make some adjustments. So we'll start with my stroke weight here, and we'll do maybe a 0.75 point line, right? And that's not a bad place to start. I do want the color not to be purple, but I want it to be black. So we'll go ahead and adjust for black. Okay. And now those lines are all black. Right? And so we'll go ahead and deselect. And if I were to turn off everything except for, and this may be the easiest way of starting to see this, let me go ahead and lock this bottom layer because I don't need that. Let me turn on those exterior walls, visible exterior walls there. And they still didn't change the color for me. How about make them black? There we go. So I'm starting to fill in those walls. I have those. I need the other walls as well. So let's continue down here. We've got interior walls. All right, let me go ahead and select them. I need to turn this on. We'll select the interior walls. There they are. All right, let's go ahead and beef them up a little bit. So we'll go 0.75, and we'll change the color of those to be black as well. Okay. Notice I'm making those match. Right, so I've got interior and exterior there. Let me go ahead and see if it's the what they're calling the hidden lines. Go ahead and turn those on, select all of them. Right, there's one there. That one's hidden, so it's not that valuable. We'll turn that off for right now. And let's see what else. Okay, that is a concrete wall. That's probably valuable. We'll work with that for just a second. So it takes a little bit of time to go back through and actually select all of these. And it's already black, so that works. And a lot of times what I find easy is to turn off all the layers like this and then slowly turn them back on as you're going. And you can kind of see. So let's see, what's this? Two little lines. We'll go ahead and beef those up. And they're black. Okay, that'll work. So those are on. Next one would be these. Turn those on. Select them. There's that one line. That one's hidden. That's a hidden line because it's under that stair. So I'm going to go ahead and change the properties of that a little bit differently. So one, I'm going to make it thinner. So we'll make it 0.25. And I'm going to make my color not a true black, but kind of a medium gray. I could go as far as typing in a value, so I could go 0, 0, 0, and then maybe 75% gray or something like that. So it's kind of a light gray. I'll go ahead and say OK. And then I'm also going to come over here to my stroke. And if you don't get the full stroke menu, you might have to click this little fly out and say Show Options. And I'm going to make that dash. And so I'll go 1 point and a 1 point dash. Which will add just a little bit of a dash to it. So if I zoom in here, you can see that that changed to be a hidden line. You see that now? Right, it's kind of a subtle hidden line. I'll press Control 0, right, and we'll continue working with the rest of these lines for a second. So this line, it probably needs to not be so bold either. So maybe I'll drop that one down too. So this is 0.25. And I think even though they're saying it's a visible line, I think I would rather have it as an invisible or a hidden line. All right, so there's 75, and let me go ahead and make it a dash line there, 1 point, 1 point. Sounds good. So now I have that little set of dash lines. So we'll come back to layers, and I'm going to work my way up still. All right, we've got these are the stairs. All right, so we've got a bunch of those lines. They really need to be pretty thin. So let's do them at 0.25. And they're black. Now when we click off, we can see that they're just kind of highlighting the edges of the stairs rather nicely. So let's continue our way up. All right, we've got whatever these are, hidden lines, interior stairs. Go ahead and select them. They're right kind of in here. To me, I think they can still be solid, so we'll go 0.25. But they shouldn't be white, they should instead be black. I'll go ahead and say OK. And now we have a little bit there. Let me select those one more time. Not very many of them, just a little bit. So we'll continue moving our way up. We've got something called the stair railing. That looks like it's in the middle here. Let's select that. And there. So 0.25 again. And they're already black. And so we can see, if we zoom in here a little bit on the stairs, that we're getting kind of a nice thin railing. Looks like we have this path here, which is down here on interior walls, kind of detracting from the elegance of the stairs. We'll go ahead and adjust that to be much thinner. So let's go 0.25, and black now kind of blends into the rest of these pieces. Okay? So we'll continue working our way up. Here's exterior walls, so let's turn those on and select them. Press Control minus so we can zoom out a little bit. Let's change the color of these to black so we can see them at first sight. There we go. I don't even see them right now. So we'll just go with it. Continue our way up. Alright, so this is the roof cap, right? Or in this case, it's being used as part of the patio here. That's way too bold for what we're seeing. I think we need something much finer. So let's go ahead and select those objects and drop the line weight down. Maybe it needs to be 0.5, something like that. 0.5. Much better. These interior ones, I think I'm going to make them a hidden. So we'll go back here and we'll make them a dashed line. And I might increase the size of that a little bit. So I did 2 by 2 instead of this fine 1 by 1. Right, I'm trying to judge what feels right. Okay? And so we'll continue working our way up. See what these are. Right. Sometimes they can be really hard to see when they're selected because they're this white color. The layer comes in as white. I'm going to go ahead and change the color of the layers into something that I can see a little bit better. So when I select this layer, we can see what the lines are that are being selected. Go ahead and change that to 0.25. Change the color to black. And so we added just a little bit of line. It looks like it's mostly right there. All right, that diagonal, I don't like at all, so we're just going to leave that off. All right, and let's see, what are these? Change the color. These are the walls that are underneath the patio. So I'll go ahead and make those a gray. So this does take a little bit of time to go all the way through this, but you end up with very, very good results in the end. So let's go ahead and make those dashed as well. So they're there. And then I'll keep working my way up in the layer structure. So that is the upper wall. That's the concrete wall. We'll leave that kind of thick, and we'll continue working our way up. So you guys don't have to watch me go through this, but you see how I'm very slowly starting to add more and more depth to the line, right? The easiest thing to do, if you don't want to spend all the time, is look at all of where it says hidden, right? So I've hidden, right? Hidden, right? All of those ones. Select those. Let me do it. Of course not, right? And you take the ones that are hidden. Oh, they're not on. Take whatever they are, select them, just make them a light line weight. Make everything that's not hidden a darker line weight, and then you can move forward with them a little bit. So I'll turn these guys back on so we can see them all right now. The truth is that I need to spend a little bit more time adjusting the line weight so they look right. I will do that so that you can see the final result, but you don't have to sit here and watch me go through every single layer. But there's one other thing that tends to work really nicely, I think, for these kinds of exports, and that is that instead of having just the stark gray background, to actually add a little bit of texture to it. And there's a tutorial, it's 3.10, that will help you to do this. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of texture behind that color. So let me jump to my layer, right, this layer 36. I need to unlock it so that I can actually select it. So now it's selected, and I'm going to go up here to opacity, right, And I'm going to click on this Make Mask button, which gives me a mask. And on this mask, which is now all black, I click on it, and it kind of highlights in orange. I'm going to place a texture. So let me go in here, and I have a bunch of grunge textures that are on my flash drive that I can use. And they have just a little bit of, and you guys probably won't see it since I invert it. But, no, I might have to pick something more stronger to do it with. File place. See if I can pick something. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it a little bit here. See how it's a little dirty? It's like a little bit dirty. That helps in this kind of a look. It's a subtle thing, but it can help humanize your drawing a little bit. So let me press Control minus. I need it to be a little bit bigger. I don't really care if it distorts a bit. Right, so I'll go ahead and let it distort a little bit. But it just adds a little bit of extra texture to it. It just softens it. So I've gone ahead and I've done that, and that's living behind. To get back, I have to click back to my original image, and then we can go back into my layers, and I'll continue to work with those layers. Obviously, I have a few lines in the chairs here that are still red. They're right here. I'm going to have to select all of those and make them black because we don't want red. So let's go ahead and make those black, and let's change the weight. These are really, really small. So I've been doing 0.25, but this time I'm probably going to do 0.1 because they're really faint chairs. We don't want them to stand out too much. Right? So I'm lightening those up quite a bit. There's a bunch, the hidden lines are white right now. I can do a faster selection method if I want for all of these white lines that are left. I can select one of them and then go up to the select menu and say select same stroke color, which would be all the white lines in the drawing. And I can then convert those to do like a 75% gray. I'll say okay, those then become gray. And then I'll go ahead and make all of them hidden lines. So I'm just speeding up the process here a little bit. We'll do 1 by 1 hidden lines. 2 by 2 split up a little better. We'll do 2 by 2. Okay, and so now I have a bunch of those hidden lines that are there. Right? I should have adjusted, these are still too thick. So let me go to select same, right, stroke color, all of these, and let me drop the overall weight here. Let's do 0.2. And so now I have all of the little hidden lines that have showed up there as well. Okay? So it's just adding a little bit more richness to this overall. I'm going to have to work with these lines as well. So let me select the same stroke weight, which may or may not get me all of them. Right? And let's go ahead and adjust those. Those are the ones that have been cut through to begin with. So let's make those the thickest. So we'll go at 1 point. I told you I didn't like these, so we're going to get rid of those little corner pieces. They're just reading a little bit too strong. I'm just trying to clarify a little bit. That piece there can go away. So I'm just going through and doing a little bit of editing. I probably need a little bit of editing down here. This line goes all the way through the drawing. I don't know what that is. We'll get rid of that. All right, let's see here. These are a bit on the thick side, so let's go ahead and select same stroke weight. Let's drop those down. This I'm going to have to find on the actual objects themselves because flat railing there. I need all of these objects. There we go. So those are thinner. This object here needs to go away. And so it's just a matter of working your way through the whole drawing. This one needs to become like this one, right, where it's a hidden line at 0.2. We can take this and say 0.2. With a 75% gray. 5. you just keep working your way through. Right? And eventually you'll get to the point where you have a relatively nice line drawing that has good line weights. The other thing that can be beneficial, right, is to go ahead and fill in what you cut through. Right? And so I can do that. When I do something like this, I always like to lock, right, my lowest layer. Right? And then I love making a duplicate of everything. But in this case, I have so many lines and so many layers, it's a little bit too hard. But I'm going to go ahead and select all, and then I'm going to go to this Live Paint tool, which is hidden underneath the Shape tool here. And I'm going to fill with black might be a little too strong, so I'm going to try a 75% gray, maybe a little higher, maybe an 80% gray. I'll go ahead and say OK, and then zoom in here, right? And I can actually fill in these regions like that, right, to give it a little bit of weight for what I've gone through. Now, when it did that, it got rid of my line weights, which is what I didn't want to have happen. So let me go back. Because my line weights are more valuable than those color regions. And then I'll go back and fill them after I make a duplicate of these outside layers. But that's another way of adding a little bit more depth. So you can see that there's still pieces on here, like this table still has objects that are way too strong. So I'll select those and drop the weight way down so that they're not overpowering. Because you can see kind of where I'm going about getting a really high-end line drawing straight out of Rhino. And other than doing a little bit of cleanup and doing a little bit of line weights, really doesn't take much to get a plan like this. Okay? So anyway, that's kind of the overall process, and especially tracking on what do you do in Illustrator to get all of these results. There are a few quirks when I go to export this. I have some objects that are really big, that are way off in space like that. When I go to export, instead of just saving for web, I'm going to go to File, Save for Web, and I'm going to check the box for, oh no, sorry. Save for web will work fine, but when I go to File, Save and Export. No, it's Export. There's a box for Use Artboard, right? So I don't want AutoCAD, but when I do one of these, like if there's a PNG or a PDF or something like that, PNG, you check Use Artboards, and that will crop to the size of the page if you're getting extra information. So there's one more of those little tricks. The other thing you can do is you can choose instead to save as and change your file format to a PDF, right, which makes it cross-compatible with like InDesign or something like that. If you were going to drop this straight into InDesign, you don't even have to save it as anything. You can just drop the Illustrator file straight into InDesign if you're doing your overall layout boards that way. And so I may do a little bit more cleanup like this topo line. And in fact, it probably wouldn't hurt me to go back and do a Make 2D after I've created a bunch of contours so that I can load those in. I'll go ahead and do that so you can see that, not live, but I'll go ahead and do that so you can see a final result with those contours in, because it can enhance a little bit of the plan view. So hopefully this one was a little bit clearer in how I presented the information. I'm trying to, like I said, this is the first time that I've gone through and worked out how to do these line drawings in a concise manner. You guys are lucky because it's not required for your final. It will be in future classes. But anyway, so this is kind of the process through which I would go through if I were creating line drawings out of Rhino. Sure. Sounds good to me. Basically, as long as you make a post for 229, whatever you post will